So smartwatches have come so far and they're getting so good now. And these two smartwatches have really blown me away. This one's under £100 here in the UK. This one's under £200 here in the UK. And these are actually two of the best watches you can get in those price ranges. But what's really interesting is how close these two devices are to each other, considering there's about £100 difference between them. So in this video, I'm going to tell you the difference between these two devices. And then what I did for you guys, I went out of my way to look at all of the other videos on these products, list out the most asked questions when it comes to these two devices, and I'm going to do some quick fire answers for you at the end of this video, because these are questions that other people have had that may have been the deciding factor when it came to actually buying one of these. So this one here, the Amazfit GTR 2, is probably called the GTR because it's round. And this one here, the Amazfit GTS, is probably called S because it's square. So that's an easy way to remember which one is which. And these are the second generation of these two watches, and there has been some significant improvements in various areas, which I'll get to in a minute. But anyway, let's get into the differences between the two. So on the GTS 2, we have a square AMOLED 1.39 inches, which is obviously smaller than the GTR 2. This version right here of the GTR 2 is the 47mm version. There is a smaller version of this. This is also the steel version. This isn't the aluminium alloy version, which has a sort of black metal around the edges. This has the silver edges and the leather strap. So that version is a little bit cheaper than this one, in fact. But pretty much when it comes to the internals, it's pretty much the same, and the screen is the same. So on this one, we've got a 1.65 inch AMOLED. Now, when it comes to the difference in pixels per inch, there is a difference. And actually, which one would you think has more pixels? And if you guessed this one, the more expensive one, you're wrong, because it's actually this one, the GTS 2. It has 341 pixels per inch, whereas this one has 326. It's not massively noticeable. And to be honest, the bigger screen real estate, I think, is more of an advantage in certain areas when it comes to actually using these watches. So on previous versions of Amazfit devices, they had Gorilla Glass. Now they've gone with a 3D curved glass. It's an unnamed brand now. I'm not sure exactly what it is. And one of the things that I really like about the curved glass is the way it kind of makes it look like it's all screen. And you'll notice here on the GTS, we do have some markings for the minutes around the edges. But if you have an all black watch face, that kind of blends into it and it looks really, really nice. And the same thing goes with the GTS. The way the screen curves over, it kind of hides the bezels a little bit. And with this particular screen here, it looks like it's edge to edge, which is a really nice design. I've been using these for just over a week now and I haven't had any scratches, and I've been using them a lot. So 3D curved glass seems pretty good at this point. Now, when it comes to the sensors on the devices, you can probably tell straight away they are identical. So we have various sensors in here. We've got a PPG optical sensor, which is the sort of heart rate monitor. We've got 6-axis accelerometer. We've got 3-axis geomagnetic sensor in there. We've got a barometer for measuring your altitude and this kind of stuff. We've got an ambient light sensor. We've got air pressure sensors. There's a bunch of sensors in here. There's actually an amazing amount of sensors in here for the price. Honestly, fantastic. And the fact that they've managed to carry most of the sensors over to the cheaper version from the more expensive version is truly impressive. So another difference you're going to see between the two watches, other than the obvious ones with the screen sizes and shapes, is the width of the band. So they probably look quite close here, but actually you've got a 22mm band here on the round version. We've got a 20mm band here on the square version. 22mm is a much more common and easier to find band, so you can pretty much replace these bands with any other smartwatches you've got, or even standard watches. And the great thing is about both of these devices is the quick release catches on the back. Super easy to do. Just pop that pin there, it comes off, done. So of course, the more expensive watch is going to have some advantages. The fact that it's bigger means that it does have a bigger battery. So we've got a 471 milliamp hour lithium polymer battery in there. Amazfit say this can last up to 14 days. And 38 days in basic mode, which is a really stripped back mode of the smartwatch. That is a best case scenario, to be honest, because I've been using it for quite a while and it does last me over 5 days, probably up to a week before having to charge it. I do take it off at night sometimes. I can't sleep very well with a watch on my wrist. I did test it out with the sleep mode, so I did sleep with it on a few times. There's various things you can do as well to mitigate the battery drainage on these, which I'll get into later on in the video. So yeah, from my testing, it's around about a week's battery here on the GTR 2. Now with the smaller device, you have a smaller battery, 246 milliamp hour battery, up to 7 days. I've been getting around 3 to 4 days with my usage. I was using this one first actually, and I did use this one to do the sleep tracking more than I did with this one. So I'd say over 3 days, 4 days, 5 days max. But if you tweak the settings, you could get that 7 days that they promise. And then if you strip it back to the basic mode, you could get up to 20 days battery life out of this, but that's just a basic watch. Now, when it comes to charging, because there's 2 different size batteries in there and they both use the same charger, this one takes around about 2 hours. So the smaller one around 2 hours, 2.5 hours here with the bigger watch. And it is a proprietary charger that they use. So it's a magnetic proprietary charger. Literally just clicks on the back here. You can't use Qi wireless charging. I tried it, didn't really work, unfortunately. So you have to use this one with the little connection pieces here, and it will just click onto the back and charge nicely. Very easy to do. Now, I know some of you guys are going to ask this question: how many watch faces are there? So there's a bunch pre-installed, but when you go into the Zepp app, which used to be called the Amazfit app, it now has over 70 watch faces to choose from, and there's more being added all the time. One of the cool things about a lot of the watch faces is they have an always on display which is custom to that watch face. So there are some generic ones which I'm going to show you in a minute, but there's also the option to adjust some of the complications on those watch faces. So if you ever see that little pen down there, you can go in and customize the watch face a little bit. So if there's little bits of information you want to have on that watch face, you can adjust it. So you can see here, it gives you a few options to play around with. So a bunch of those watch faces have that, and that's a really nice way to customize your watch, make it your own. Now, another really significant difference here is the buttons on the side. So on the GTR, we have 2 buttons, and on the GTS, we have 1 button. So for me, that's not a deal breaker. That single button brings up the main menu. The top button here does the same thing. The lower button on the GTR will bring up a list of most used apps, and you can customize this however you want. And you do have that same feature here on the GTS. You just have to access it slightly different. So you double tap it and it brings up your pre-selected workouts. Now, in terms of workouts, I know some of you guys are going to ask this. In earlier versions, before they had all the software updates, it was only like 12 sports. Now we've got over 90 different sports on these smartwatches. I'm not going to list them all out for you. I'll put a link where you can actually check out all of the different sports modes that it has. Now, I'm just going to run through some of the similarities and things that you need to know about both these watches. So they both have Bluetooth 5.0. They both do support Wi-Fi, but will only use Wi-Fi when you're transferring music from your device to the watch itself. It won't use this Wi-Fi to send tracking information and all this kind of stuff to your smartphone, unfortunately. Both devices do have GPS, so you can be away from your phone and it can track your GPS coordinates, and then when you come back to your device, it will then sync up with Google Maps and show you where you've been, which is incredibly handy. So there are some differences between this and the Chinese variant. This is the global variant of the Amazfit watches, and it's actually got a little bit less storage than the Chinese variant. So we've got 3 GB ROM on board to store music. And the great thing is you've got Bluetooth 5.0, so when you go for a run, just wear your watch. You don't need to take a separate MP3 player or your smartphone, which is great. And I heard that the Chinese variant actually had NFC, which we don't have here on the global variant, unfortunately. It's probably just a bunch of red tape, and hopefully we'll see NFC on the next GTS 3 and GTR 3 in the future. And to be honest with you, I haven't missed it that much. I know some of you guys out there might like to pay with your watch, but you can't do that with these ones at this point. And in terms of water resistance, both devices are 50 ATM resistant, so around 50 meters water resistant. This leather strap though, you probably don't want to go swimming with this leather strap. So to sum up the differences between the two devices, we've got a bigger battery here, bigger display here, more pixels on the screen here, and a smaller display. Slightly lighter device as well. In terms of tracking, they're pretty much identical, which is interesting. Slightly bigger strap here, and with this one you get the more sort of formal looking leather strap, which you can switch out to a fluoro rubber like this. 2 buttons on the GTR, 1 button here on the GTS, but you can access the second button function just by double tapping, so it's not a massive loss in my opinion. All right, now let's get on to the quick fire questions. So does it support Strava? So actually the Zepp app will work in tandem with Strava and send data from the Zepp app to Strava. So yes, it is compatible with Strava, and it's also compatible with Google Fit in a way as well. The GPS, how good is it? Because a lot of people said the previous versions weren't that good. I've been using it quite a bit, and to be honest, it works really well. It syncs up very nicely with the Google Maps on my phone, and within the Zepp app you can see where you've been, you can see all of that information, and it works very well for my testing. Does it have its own map on board? It doesn't have its own map on board. Like I mentioned before, it just syncs up with Google Maps once you come back to your phone. Does it support NFC functionality? Not at the moment. Version 3 hopefully will. We will see in the future. Does it support SpO2? Yes, it does. So SpO2 is right here. It's pretty accurate too. One thing I will say about SpO2 on these watches is you really have to tighten the strap up quite a bit so that it's very firm on your wrist to get the best reading. How are messages shown on the watch? So they actually work really well. You can actually see the full message, so it doesn't crop the message at all, and it does support emojis as well. Can you quick reply to messages? Unfortunately not. There is no pre-programmed responses built into the watch, so you'll have to use your phone for that at this point. Again, that might be something they add on version 3. Can you customize the always on display? Yes, you can on both watches. It works exactly the same. You go here, you go to display and brightness. You've got your always on display. Now you've got a few options here. So you go to watch face style. So you can choose follow the watch face, which is going to give you a watch face which is very similar to the one you've chosen, but just kind of like a watered down version of it. You could choose digital watch face. So that's going to give you a similar watch face to what you see here. Once this one switches off, you'll see what I mean. And then you've got analog watch face, which will be very nice on this particular one, the round one, because of the minute hands and stuff like that. It'll be very good for this particular watch. So we'll set it to analog watch face, and that should do it. So that's your digital one, and this is going to switch to analog. So one of the questions that came up quite a bit is about Alexa. Amazfit said that Alexa support is coming to these devices because both of these devices have a microphone and speaker built in, which is something I should have mentioned right at the beginning when it came to the similarities between the two. And one of the cool things that we have here is the ability to do offline voice controls. So if you're riding a bike or you're on a treadmill or something like that, you can literally flick your wrist up and it will open up the mic and you'll be able to give commands to the watch. Some basic commands like open the running app or something like that, and it will do it. Now, one of the downsides to that is the fact that it's going to kill your battery quite a lot, because every time you move your wrist, it activates the voice controls. But it does work well, and I'm quite impressed with it, to be honest. I've not really had anything like this on a smartwatch before, or used anything like this on a smartwatch before. When the watch is off and you raise your wrist, it opens up. You see the little blue thing there? That's it listening for a command. And it can recognize some very basic commands for controlling the watch, but hopefully they bring that Alexa support sometime later this year. That will be cool. Another question that came up a lot is, can it support third-party equipment like belts and stuff like that, and heart rate monitors, chest heart rate monitors and stuff like this? I couldn't find it in the app. Again, that might be something that comes to it in the future. And now that you guys know the difference between these two awesome watches, and knowing the fact that this one is actually £100 less than this one, which one would you go for? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man. See you in the next one. Don't be late.